Happy Sunday, fun day. Welcome everyone to No One Daily, Bitcoin Pod, a great BTFD opportunity. In today's show, I'll be breaking down the latest technical analysis for the Bitcoin. We'll also be discussing only 4% of the world's population actually hodls Bitcoin this year in 2025. I'll be breaking down this latest report, as well as El Salvador has acquired over 13 BTC since March 1st, despite the recent IMF deal with the the $1.4 billion loan. We'll also be discussing Bitcoin reserve backlash signals unrealistic industry expectations. We'll also be discussing Michael Saylor pushes the U.S. government to purchase up to 25% of the Bitcoin supply, which is 5.25 million BTC. And speaking of that, we'll also be discussing Saylor envisioning the market cap climbing to $200 trillion, ultimately with the Bitcoin price skyrocketing to $10 million per coin. We'll also be taking a look at the overall crypto market, all this, plus so much more in today's show. If you're new to the channel, very important to smash the likes, go ahead, subscribe, then ring that bell. Turn on all notifications to receive daily premium crypto news alerts every single day, 7 days a week, including Sundays, just like this. Today is pod episode number 1928. I'm your host, JV. It's Sunday, March 9th, 2025. Church is in session. I'm going to be preaching the holy gospel of Satoshi for the next couple of hours, so spread the word. Let's kick it off with our market watch, as we do each and every day. Coin 360 pulling up here. You should be able to see on your screen. Bitcoin's currently pulling back, maintaining just above 83,300 at the time of this live stream. Ether's all the way down to 2,000. These are sub 2021 prices, FYI. XRP down 7%, trading back under $2.20 as the bulk of the altcoin market is correcting. And checking out coinmarketcap.com. The current crypto market cap sits at $2.71 trillion. The Biddy market cap, $1.648 trillion. We got roughly 73 billion worth of volume for the past 24 hours. And the Bitcoin dominance currently sitting at 60.7%, back on the climb. Ether dominance all the way down to 9.1%, which is pretty much a multi-year low. Not a good look for Ether. And checking out top 100 crypto gainers past 24 hours. We got Move leading the pack up a very modest 0.98%, and that's the top gainer because everything is getting wrecked right now, correcting it in the red, and it kind of sucks for the alt market, but it is what it is. Be careful with the shitcoinery broskies. And checking out the crypto bubbles, we get more of a visual perspective. Let's start on the day. Safe to say 99% of the market in the red. Zoom it out on the monthly, maybe 95% of the market wrecked, down anywhere from 20 to 50% on average. And checking out the crypto getting fear index. Today, we're back down to a 27 fear. Yesterday, 25. Last week at 26. And last month at 44 in fear. And checking out the time chain calendar, we have 162,949 blocks until the next halving of 2028. Currently on block height number 887,051. And you can currently exchange one fiat monopoly dollar for 1,201 sats. So pick up the sats, put down the gats, pick up some Bitcoin caps from my man Sergio over at bitcoincaps.net. Let's dive into today's astrology for the broskies, aka technical analysis. We'll also be pulling up some of the live charts. Headline reads, Bitcoin slides another 3%. Is the Biddy price headed for 69,420 next? Well, let's discuss it. Exchange order books are forming an area of intense interest amongst Bitcoin traders as the weekly candle closed near, which we will receive in approximately 2 hours. And happy 420. It's exactly 420 here in Puerto Rico. And I know the times change as well. So Eastern time is equivalent to our time. So we're all in the same alignment, which is pretty cool. Hence the 4 p.m. stream today. But anyways, liquidation levels on either side of the spot price look ripe for the taking, with longs already paying as Bitcoin sags to 83. Liquidation map says the whales hunting spots as outlined here. Lots of long liquidations around 84.3. The shorts are stacked near 86.5 to 87. Know these levels for the stop losses, and data from CoinGlass currently puts aggregate 24-hour crypto liquidations just over $300 million. The thickest bid liquidity across the exchanges stood at just below 83, with the spot price dangerously close to breaking lower. That's right. Now, could February's multi-month low of 78 just be the start. You let me know. A bearish Bitcoin price take suggests the market has not done retesting levels not seen since November of last year. As Milky Bull Crypto shares, there is a clear chance Bitcoin retests the 50-week simple moving average, as he outlines here alongside the 1-week chart. Bitcoin likely heading for the moving average support for a potential local bottom. Now, Bitcoin last interacted with this 50-week simple moving average back in September, but avoided a weekly candle close below it since March of 2023. The 200-day simple moving average is also back on the radar as the price challenges it as support for the first time since October. Analysts are putting a 95% odds that 69,000 will hold. And if you remember, 69 is the previous cycle all-time high from back in 2021 in November. How many of you were around for that? Do let me know. For me, it feels like yesterday. Time just been flying. This would take Bitcoin back to its old 2021 all-time high, as I just outlined, marking a 37% correction versus the current one. The lowest price forward tool gives a 95% certainty. The Bitcoin will not go lower. Just note, nobody can predict the future. Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's probably a 30% chance it goes lower, not just 5%. But what do I know? I mean, we're currently floating at around 80,000, so anything is possible. My personal thoughts is be prepared for any scenario which can come, whether we drop lower or we start mooning and never return to these price levels ever again. That way, regardless of what happens, you're prepared. And quoting the high priest of Bitcoin, Max Kaiser, buy Bitcoin and crash the IMF. Now, he's the one who told Ricardo Salinas to make his jet a Bitcoin jet and paint it orange, in which he did. And so the Bitcoin Air Force dropping the truth bombs globally. Let's go. And quoting Bitcoin OG Adam Back, people are undervaluing the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve announcement. It is huge for moving the Overton window. The actual U.S. government promoting the BITI provides new ultimate reference for sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, mutual funds to add additional Bitcoin allocations. And if you don't know, now you know. And let's also pull up some of the live charts via TradingView, which I'm doing right now for you guys. We'll do a little live chart. Action Jackson satisfaction here on a Sunday. Here's the 1-hour chart. Overall, in my humble opinion, it's looking pretty bearish here. We need to stage a recovery. We've been dropping pretty steadily, but overall, right now we're hovering at 83,000. Zooming out from the 1 hour, taking a look at a 4-hour chart. As you can see here, today has been bearish. I mean, unfortunately, we had 2 major 4-hour drops, and we're currently looking to rise and recapture where we left off, but we could continue dropping. So be prepared, family, and checking out the daily chart. And it is ironic, the past several weekends, minus last week Sunday when Trump made the big tweet, we've been bearish. And then when we did get that $10,000 candle on that Sunday, the following Monday, we corrected when the markets open, closing that CME gap. But here's the 1-day chart. We still have an overall rising wedge, but we still have a couple of bear targets, unfortunately, on the radar. One just shy of 69,000, hence a lot of analysts are calling for that to retest. And then we have a super bear target all the way down at 49,000. And zooming out from the daily, we take a quick look at a weekly chart. It says it's going up forever, Laura. We can see we are going to get a weekly close here in roughly an hour and a half, around 6 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, it's going to be a bearish close unless we have a massive parabolic run up out of nowhere in the next hour. But here's the silver lining. 124 cup and handle target is still in play, even with all the bearish sentiment and the corrective weeks we have seen here. And zooming out from the weekly, we'll take a look at the monthly. And even on the monthly now that we've had this major correction, even though we kicked off March very bullish, we lost pretty much all that. And here we are today. Let me know how you think we'll do for this entire month. Do you think we'll bounce right back, or do you think we'll continue correcting for a bit? Holla at your boy. And there you have it. There's the latest TA. Headline reads, only 4% of the world's population holds Bitcoin. In 2025, it's literally less than 1 million addresses have more than a whole coin or more on it. I saw that chart the other day. So let me know if you're a 4%er. 4% of the global population currently holds the BITI, with the highest concentration of ownership in the United States, where an estimated 14% of the individuals own Bitcoin. So that means 86 86% of you not watching, I would assume everyone watching owns it, but 86% of Americans don't own Biddy. So you're early. Consider yourself lucky if you're here right now. According to the research report by River, a Bitcoin financial services company, North America remains the continent with the highest adoption rate amongst individuals and institutions, while Africa is currently the lowest at only 1.6%. So overall, Biddy adoption tended to be higher in more developed regions than in developing regions. River estimates that Bitcoin has achieved 3% of the maximum adoption potential, signaling that the digital currency is still in the early stages of global adoption. As you can see, Bitcoin's adoption path, 3% adoption, Bitcoin in 2025, comparing it to online banking in 1996, social media in 2005, and the internet in 1990. The financial services company arrived at the 3% figure by calculating Bitcoin's total addressable market, including governments, corporations, and institutions, at only 1%. River also took institutional underallocation and individual ownership rates into account to arrive at the 3% metric. And although Bitcoin has come a long way since the early cypherpunk days, recently becoming a U.S. government reserve asset, several hurdles still stand in the way of Bitcoin mass adoption on a global scale. And here's the estimated Bitcoin ownership by country. Again, North America, 10.7%. South America, 6.6%. Africa, the lowest at 1.6%. Europe, 3.4%. Asia, 3.6%. And Oceania, 3.3%. Now, Bitcoin stands at the intersection of tech and finance, two topics that are dense enough on their own, let alone together. The biggest problem facing Bitcoin's mass adoption is the lack of financial and technical education, which fuels the misconceptions about the Biddy, including the idea that it is a scam or a Ponzi scheme, when we all know the ultimate Ponzi scheme is called the US dollar. You know what I mean? Now, digital assets are also notorious for their high volatility. A friend of the short-term trader, but the enemy of anyone using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange or store of value. I don't know about all that, but high volatility, disproportionality affects the residents in developing economies who have turned to the US dollar stablecoins as a digital store of value due to their low transaction fees and relative stability compared to other cryptos. During the recent White House Crypto Summit, which just occurred 2 days ago, Friday, United States Treasury Secretary announced the U.S. will use stablecoins to ensure U.S. dollar and protect the status of the global reserve currency. Here's my understanding of it, and it's exactly David Icke's perspective. They're, banning CBDCs. Trump already made the announcement there will be no central bank digital currencies, but they're just using a different name for the same thing. The name, stablecoins, which is ultimately a programmable dollar, aka a central bank digital currency. And you heard it first and foremost coming out of the White House summit. So don't trust any new stable coins created by the US government, because all it is really is a central bank digital currency with a different name. So I just like to point out the obvious, but I know I'm preaching to the choir. We all know central bank digital currencies are bad. I mean, what can go wrong when central banking cartels can program your money? They can put an expiration date on it. You know what I mean? They'd have total control of how you can spend your money. For example, maybe you have a bad or low social credit score because you're saying awful things about your government, and now all of a sudden you're not allowed to use your own money to purchase a flight to go travel or to do XYZ, and that's how they can retain your freedom and limit you to what you're able to do. That's why I just say no to these central bank digital currencies, regardless if they call it a stable coin. Just stack thy Biddy and trust nobody. And we'll leave it at that. But anyways, next story of the day, El Salvador has been stacking the Biddy, which we love to see. El Salvador acquired over 13 BTC since March 1st, despite the recent IMF deal with the $1.4 billion loan. There's been a lot of controversy here, so let's break her down. El Salvador acquired 13 Bitcoin since March 1st. Not too shabby. That's in the past 8 days. Despite the IMF pressure on the country's public sector to stop accumulating the decentralized store value asset. According to the El Salvador Bitcoin office, the country's Bitcoin treasury holds a total of over 6,105 BTC, valued at more than 527 million at the current price. The Central American country typically acquires Bitcoin at a steady pace of one new Bitcoin every 24 hours. However, on March 3rd, El Salvador purchased 5 Biddies in a single day. El Salvador struck a deal with the IMF back in December for a $1.4 billion loan from the organization. And as part of the deal, the government of El Salvador agreed to rescind the status of Bitcoin as legal tender in the country and scale back public sector involvement. with Bitcoin. Here's the proof of work. You can see their actual Bitcoin holdings worth 527 million with 6,105 BTC. Now, El Salvador's Congress amended the Bitcoin laws back in January to comply with the IMF loan agreement. Lawmakers repealed the previous version of the law in a 55-2 vote. But despite the repeal, the government continued to stack the biddy, purchasing 2 Bitcoin in a single day on February 1st and continuing its daily accumulation of the biddy. March 3rd, the IMF issued a new request pressuring El Salvador to stop accumulating the biddy and stipulated that the country could not issue debt or tokenize securities tied to Bitcoin. However, Bukele responded to the IMF pressure and said El Salvador will continue buying Bitcoin, characterizing the IMF's continued pressure as whining. Reading the direct post from Bukele. This all stops in April. This all stops in June. This all stops in December. No, it's not stopping. If it didn't stop when the world ostracized us and most Bitcoiners abandoned us, it won't stop now, and it won't stop in the future. Proof of work is greater than proof of whining. A very profound post from President Bukele. Respect. Now, yeah, man, the government of El Salvador, unapologetic pro-Bitcoin stance, caused several major crypto firms to announce that they are relocating to the Central American country. Let me know if you guys have ever visited a Bitcoin country. As you know, I was out there back in January for the Max and Stacy Invitational. Phenomenal experience, by the way. On January 7th, Bitfinex Derivatives announced it was relocating from Seychelles, if I'm pronouncing that right, to El Salvador. Stablecoin issuer Tether followed suit on January 13th by announcing it was moving its headquarters to El Salvador. They allegedly building a massive high-rise building, the Tether building. There's a massive Google building in the El Presidente district in San Salvador, where I visited, which is also pretty impressive. You have the Strike headquarters out there, Jack Mahler's company. A lot of companies setting up shop, Rumble setting up shop out there. Why? Because it's a beautiful place to be. It's Bitcoin country, and there's a lot of advantageous reasons when it comes to taxes, clearly, as well. But there you have it, yo. What are your thoughts? Do you think Bukele will just continue to buy the biddy regardless of what the IMF says? Next story of the day. Let's dive deeper into the strategic Bitcoin reserve, which is the big news we got this week. The widespread disappointment surrounding the U.S. And FYI, I'm not disappointed by that announcement. I think it's phenomenal, but how the market's reacting is what it is. I just look at it as a blessing from God to stack more sats, but I digress. Hailed as a historic step for Bitcoin adoption, suggests unrealistic investor expectations, according to regulatory experts. Trump signed an executive order, which March 7th, that was on Friday, which will utilize Bitcoin seized in government criminal cases. Rather than purchasing the asset directly from the market, the announcement triggered a more than 6% drop at the biddy price, dropping from 90,000 to 84. The reaction signals unrealistic industry expectations, according to this analyst and co-founder of Ethereum, a regulatory blockchain infrastructure firm focused on institutions. Quoting them here, it was very clear that the U.S. government could utilize the existing Bitcoin in their possession, aka seize funds. It is bizarre to see such a big public disappointment coming from some industry players. Not that long ago, even the idea of a Bitcoin reserve held and supported by the federal government was a revolutionary idea, and now we see a very solid implementation. The Bitcoin reserve is a cautious approach with taxpayer funds, which make this decision well aligned with the messaging from the administration. And here's Trump signing the executive order for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And he did the right thing, in my opinion, because he separated the altcoins from Bitcoin. And that's the important thing. If they were all lumped up in the same thing, that would not be a good look. So I think he did the right thing. Although the current plan does not involve government Bitcoin purchases, the order does not rule them out. In the future, the order authorizes the U.S. Treasury and the Commerce Secretary to develop budget-neutral strategies to buy the Bitcoin for the reserve, provided there are no additional costs to taxpayers. And there's a plethora of different ways to go about. Saylor already handed over a list to the government, all the different budget-neutral strategies to do just that. For example, sell your gold. and trade it for the hardest asset to ever exist. Still, the short-term investor disappointment paired with the ongoing macroeconomic concern related to the import tariffs may push the biddy close to 82,000. No, that's precisely where we're currently at the time of the live stream. We may be correcting sub 80,000, and if we drop sub 80, 69 may be on the radar, which was the 2021 all-time high, previous cycle. Trump signed the historic Bitcoin reserve order a day ahead of the hosting of the White House summit, which was pretty dope, which also received mixed reactions from the community. Despite the divided reception, the summit marks a pivotal moment for the White House engagement with the crypto industry, according to the General Counsel and Chief Info Security Officer of the Ethereum name service, quoting him here. The very fact that the summit is happening is a dramatic shift from the hands-off approach of the Biden admin and is sure to resound with the blockchain community as well as the younger voters. And there are high hopes for the outcome of the crypto summit. One of those hopes is that the engagement like this with the White House will continue long after the initial meeting. Now for our next story of the day, Michael Saylor pushes the U.S. government to purchase up to 25% of the Bitcoin supply. And also this other headline, the future of Bitcoin, Michael Saylor envisions a market cap climbing to $200 trillion. That's the Bitcoin market cap, which would send the biddy price parabolic to 10 million per coin. Let's dive right in. Strategy founder Michael Saylor has proposed that the U.S. government acquire up to 25% of the Bitcoin total supply over the next decade for its strategic Bitcoin reserve. And if we run the math, that's 5.25 million BTC. Quoting the Giga Chat here, acquire 5 to 25% of the Bitcoin network in trust for the nation through consistent programmatic daily purchases between 2025 and 2035 when 99% of all the Bitcoin has been issued. Saylor wrote this in a document entitled A Digital Asset Strategy to Dominate the 21st Century Global Economy. Now, on the low end, 5% of the Bitcoin supply would be 1 million BTC. 25% again is 5.25 million BTC. And this low number of the spectrum comes from Cynthia Lummis, that what she proposed in her documents when she shared it at the Bitcoin conference. She said in her strategic reserve bill, she was wanting the government to buy 5%. So Michael Saylor's like, why so bearish? If you want to do the right thing, buy 25%. I mean, I think he's right. If Trump is going to go, all in, you might as well go on the higher end of the spectrum. But anyways, it's up to the government at this point. Let me know what you think they'll likely do. Saylor presented the documents to the U.S. President, Mr. Trump, and his government executives. As you know, he was just recently at the Crypto White House Summit and the global crypto leaders, and that was just on Friday. So this is all brand new news. He explained the government should stick to a never sell your Bitcoin policy. I love that policy, predicting that by 2045, in the next 20 years, the strategic Bitcoin reserve can generate over $10 trillion annually. Wow, $10 trillion per year, and serve as a perpetual source of prosperity for Americans. And up until 2045, Saylor said the reserve could generate between $16 trillion and $81 trillion for the U.S. Treasury. What's currently our debt? Allegedly, like 37 trillion. So we can completely eliminate all of our debt just from the Bitcoin strategy he proposes, potentially easing the national debt or erasing altogether. Now, if you haven't saw the actual document, it's about a 38-page document. In yesterday's episode, we gone through it a little more in detail. Make sure to check out yesterday's pod after this one's over if you missed it. You can see Michael Saylor's post here. I shared this today at the White House Digital Assets Summit. So naturally, he was prepared. And earlier in the day, as you know, Trump signed the executive order establishing the strategic Bitcoin reserve, as well as the digital asset stockpile. And in the digital asset stockpile, that's where like Cardano, XRP, Ethereum, and all the altcoins would go separate from the strategic Bitcoin reserve, initially funded with crypto Cs in criminal cases. And while it didn't include an immediate plan to buy more Bitcoin, the order stated the Treasury and the Commerce Secretaries, who's Howard Lutnick here, would develop budget-neutral strategies for acquiring more of the biddy, ensuring no added costs for taxpayers. And like I said, there's a plethora of creative ways to stockpile Bitcoin without having to cost the taxpayers any money. And that's what it's all about. And Saylor has already introduced a bunch of those ideas to the White House. So I'm pretty confident they'll figure out ways to stockpile Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, because they can't purchase it. But again, all they got to do is get creative there. So let's now hypothetically talk about this. 25% supply allocation far exceeding the previous proposal. If the U.S. government actually acquired 25% of the Bitcoin supply, how would they acquire that much? I have no idea. Obviously, it would be a long-term plan. It's not going to happen overnight. There's not that much Bitcoin available, but it would hold 5.25 million BTC. Could you imagine 25% of the Bitcoin supply held by one nation? Do you know what that means? No other nation would be able to hold that much Bitcoin. This is the global hash war playing out, the game theory in real time. Far more than the 1 million Bitcoin, which is 5% of the supply, which Cynthia Lummis proposed, as I mentioned earlier, and the Bitcoin Act, which was introduced at the conference back in July of 2024. Meanwhile, Saylor has continued accumulating Bitcoin, having purchased an additional $2 billion worth on February 24th. This brings Strategy's total holdings to nearly 500,000 BTC. I repeat, Strategy now has Strategy B, 500,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. The acquisition came after Strategy raised another $2 billion in a senior convertible note offering to purchase more of the Bitcoin. And let's dive a little deeper, because if the Bitcoin market cap hits what Saylor is projecting, 200 trillion, that's going to send the Bitcoin price north of $10 million, according to the Giga Chad. So check this out. In a recent interview with CNBC, Michael Saylor, co-founder of Strategy, reiterated his bullish outlook on the Bitty, predicting Bitcoin can reach a staggering 200 trillion market cap. That'd be roughly, I'd say, 1/4 of the total addressable market, which probably just north of 800 trillion, which means all the money and all the capital in the world, which he sees obviously a lot of it flowing right into Bitcoin, currently valued at around 2 trillion. It's crazy to say that. It's actually less than 2 trillion. Saylor believes Bitcoin's trajectory will see it grow to 20 trillion and eventually hit the 200 trillion mark, translating to an approximate price of $10 million per Bitcoin. And that's his bear scenario. Just FYI. Now, Saylor attributes this potential growth to a global shift in capital investment, stating that capital is coming from overseas, from China, from Russia, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, from the 20th century to the 21st century. His forecast comes against the backdrop of Trump's recent announcements regarding the creation of the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, and then the separation with the altcoins, which would include Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano, which ignited a heated debate with financial and crypto, or within the financial and crypto circles. And while Saylor acknowledges the appeal of the Bitcoin-only reserve, he supports Trump's broader strategy that encompasses multiple cryptos. He emphasized there's no way to interpret this other than this is bullish for Bitcoin and is bullish for the entire U.S. crypto industry. And although some conservatives, such as the Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong and Gemini co-founder Tyler Winklevoss, have advocated for more restrictive Bitcoin-centric policies, Saylor noted the president's approach allows for a more inclusive economic policy. That's powerful, considering the Coinbase CEO and Gemini CEO and founders, they run the shitcoin casinos. They run the major exchanges. And even they said and agreed that, Bitcoin should have its own, strategic reserve. So I'm glad that Trump listened, and that the Treasury Secretary Howard Lutnick, they all went, David Sachs and the new, team at the White House actually listened. That was pretty cool. But anyways, when asked about his involvement with the White House, Saylor confirmed he has been in discussions with various lawmakers, the Dems and Republicans, as well as members of the cabinet and administration, quoting him here, for the last 4.5 years, I've been talking about the Bitty to anybody, anywhere in the world, every day. Saylor stated during the interview, highlighting his commitment to promoting Bitcoin. Saylor argues that establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve could provide the United States with significant economic advantages, including the potential to alleviate the national debt. In fact, we covered that a little earlier. It would very easily eliminate it altogether if Trump went full all in on what they're proposing. Saylor shared that if the United States takes a position in the emerging crypto economy and buying up to 10, even 25% of the Bitcoin network, we're going to pay off the national debt. And so why wouldn't that be in the interest of the United States? In addressing concerns about Bitcoin's notorious volatility, Saylor pointed to its historical long-term gains, asserting, "I don't think anybody's ever lost money in the Bitcoin network holding for 4 years. Presumably, you want to buy Bitcoin, you want to hold it for 100 years. So the proposal for a U.S. crypto reserve is still in its infancy, and Saylor indicated that its success will depend heavily on legislative decisions made in the coming months. Quoting him again, "There are a dozen people on it: the head of the Treasury, the SEC, the CFTC, Commerce, the Attorney General, the President, both the Republicans and the Democrats," he noted, emphasizing the diverse range of opinions that will influence the outcome. So you guys let me know your thoughts. Do you think the Bitcoin market cap will hit 200 trillion sometime, and by what year? And do you think that will send the pretty little bitty 10 million north? Holla, let me know. That's, again, the latest from the Giga Chad, Michael Saylor. I mean, if they actually follow through with 25% allocation, what do you think that's going to do to other countries around the world? Do you think they're just going to sit quietly, sit back, and allow the United States to, flex at that level without them getting a piece of the pie? I think not. So game on, family. Game on.